Thanks for joining us as we take a closer look at the 2019 movie Alita Battle Angel. My name is John Newton, science fiction author, and I'm joined by Jono, the Culture Crusader. In Alita Battle Angel, a cyborg with no memory of her past embarks on a thrilling journey to uncover her true identity. Set in a visually stunning futuristic world, Alita discovers her powerful abilities, faces relentless foes, and uncovers the secret of her own existence. As she battles for justice, her quest for self-discovery leads to a gripping, action-packed adventure filled with heart and spectacular visuals. The question is, will Alita find her purpose in this dystopian future? Alita Battle Angel is a cross between Hunger Games, Blade Runner, and Ghost in the Shell with a dash of rollerball thrown in for good measure. Jono, would you agree with that? Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, sounds about right to me from what I know of those franchises. Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen those all or not.
I can't remember which one. Maybe one of them that I haven't seen. I can't remember.
Have you seen Ghost in the Shell?
I've seen, I think, the live action one. I haven't seen the actual whatever it was based on, like the anime or whatever it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm considering that as being a possibility of one that we might do.
Yeah, right.
But I'm not 100% sure.
Johansson, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been getting around. She's been a lot of. More so than you just don't see her in Marvel. She's out there doing her own films pretty well. So on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rate this movie?
Honestly, I originally had it at like an 8.5. Then when I rewatched it for this, I'd probably put it up to a 9. I really like it. I love this movie.
Now, for you, I don't know. Have you really given 10s to any of your movies that you've reviewed?
I don't know. I've definitely given a few 9s. I think Oppenheimer I gave a 9. Sound of Freedom I gave a 9. I can't remember. I think from memory. I don't remember giving a 10. I'm not sure.
Okay. So this would be for you. It would definitely be one of your top ratings.
Yeah, I guess. Like I don't know. Maybe 9's too high. I could pick apart certain things about it, but there's so much stuff that I love about it that I just don't really care that much to try to get really critical on the few things that I do think maybe aren't as good. I guess I still will mention it, but yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that true with stories too. If you have humor's a good thing with that too. Is like the movie can kind of be campy and maybe poorly acted, but if it's really funny, you don't care. Yeah. You're going to throw all that stuff out. So if other aspects of this really are enjoyable for you and really hit it in the right way and say, I can't imagine them doing that much better, then some of the flaws you gloss over and say, yeah, okay, whatever, but I really enjoyed it. Yeah. So some of those other movies are things that we haven't done yet, but I think that we would like to. If you were to say, what was the thing that stood out in this movie for you more than anything else?
I think my favorite thing about it is just Alita as a character. I think that she is a really good example of the strong female protagonist actually done well, which is so uncommon in modern stuff. And so I really like her because of, I guess, mostly her humanity and how much personality she shows as a character, but also the fact that she is allowed to fail and then like try again and succeed and all of that. She's not just, perfect from the start. She's not just succeeding at everything she puts her hand to immediately. Yeah, I really like her.
Yeah, I would agree with you in that regard too. Is that like say Captain Marvel, for example, she really didn't seem to earn, or even Rey from Star Wars, she didn't seem to earn what she had, right? But for Alita, there's enough of a backstory to say that she's actually a step down from where she was previously. And it's not so much based on a female physique as it is because she's an android, right? So it's whatever the mechanics of her are of her body. Yeah. I would pull back a little bit in saying there was one statement in the movie. They said a couple of times, like, this is the body of a warrior. And I'm thinking, not necessarily. If you're talking about dynamics, so if you take the strength was what her heart and maybe the nanotech frame that she's given, right? Plus her battle training. Would you say that that's where her strengths are?
I think so. They also mentioned that like she had that lost martial arts form or something. They mentioned somewhere in there the power of the mind. I thought that was a bit nonsense, but everything else, yeah, seems like mostly it's the android body and the heart that is the
Right.
strength.
Right. I'd like to get into that a little bit later there too. I do have a couple of comments before we dive into getting to more of a spoiler territory. From Thomas Hall, he said, "Now I can give my eyes comment." I'm not sure. Now he left a comment before we got started in the previous live stream.
Yeah.
He was mixed up and said, "Oh, I thought that today was going to be the Alita thing," and he mentioned something about her eyes. Now I can give my eyes comment. I'm not sure which disturbed me more: the creepy anime eyes or the live action movie. Or how quickly I adapted to it. I don't. There was. I think if you look at, we have some previous. Well, first of all, do you have any reaction to how they handled the way she looked, especially with the oversized eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of cool as a stylistic choice, although it looked better in some scenes than others. Like certain scenes, yeah, I was completely just on board for it. And other scenes, I was like, oh wow, that's like kind of like uncanny. I don't know, it was a bit off-putting at times, but I liked it as a design choice when the CGI could actually do it justice, I guess.
So I think that they were trying to mimic. I'm gonna put up a couple of images. Now, this is the anime that Alita is based on. This is Japanese anime, and or not sorry, anime manga. And these were some of the images that were on the covers of these, and you can see where they pretty much nailed it with this. And she does have the oversized eyes. I think in some of the earlier artwork they were planning for the movie, they were going to try to mimic her hair as well, like what was here, but then went for the shorter hair that she had in the movie. So the eyes really do try to match what that was originally. And he followed up with Ghost in the Shell. The anime was far superior, I guess, to the movie. I don't know. I'd have to, if we're going to do that, I'd have to dig into it, do that as a review. And Thomas, you let us know if you think that would be a good one to try to hit. I think I may have looked at it and kind of steered away because I'm not sure about we try to stay away from anything that has sexual content or nudity as doing a review on it, but I'm not sure how strong that is in that movie. And it says a good popcorn movie. Sorry, I didn't see it in the theater, which is rare. He might be more of a theater guy than maybe you, Jono.
Yeah.
So we are going to dive into spoiler section. This movie is fairly fresh. It came out, what would it be now? 6 years ago. Compared to some of the movies we've done recently, this would be enough that somebody may not have seen it. So if you haven't seen this and you do want to go watch it, if you venture on with this further from here, we might be kind of spoiling the movie for you.
Also, did you give it a rating out of 10? I can't remember.
No, I didn't. Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, good.
I would, boy, this is so hard to do sometimes. I would say I would give it an 8. I did enjoy it, but there were some things there, especially with the ending and some things that the way they handled some stuff that has to do with the movie material itself that was matched the original manga comic series. I didn't really care for, so that would mark it down to an 8.
Yeah.
But as far as the adaptation, everything goes, I think they did a fantastic job with that.
Yeah.
So, theatrical review. So we're going to take a closer look now that we have the spoiler aspect there. I'm going to leave this up for a bit. This was, I think it delivers a really visually breathtaking experience blended with the cyberpunk aesthetics and special effects that were there. There were some things that they had done to try to match her face with the action as well. This was directed by Robert Rodriguez and produced by James Cameron. James Cameron had his hand in it quite a kind of bit. So if you remember with the movies that he did, we had Avatar, And then we can just go on the list. What other, do you remember any of the movies that he had produced or directed?
I know there's a lot. I always get him confused with other people. Was he involved in Terminator? Is that him?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the Titanic, when he was
Yeah.
working, he wanted to do this back in the mid 90s. He wanted to actually adapt this for
Yeah.
the big
Okay.
screen. And he was working on the Titanic at the time, so he put it off. And even if you can imagine trying to do this with CGI
Yeah.
back in the 90s, I probably wouldn't have been able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And so the film, during the development of this film, he was also working on Avatar. And so he couldn't put as much time into it as he wanted. There was delays in it. I think way back in 2009 or so, they were starting to work on it, or 2003 even. And things kept on getting pushed off and delayed. And so the film showcases the action sequences. I think they're pretty stunning, with the rich world building and centered around Alita. So would you say that this was a character driven story then?
I would say so. At the very least, that was the part that really drew me in the most and that I enjoyed the most, was the character. Not just her, I also really enjoyed Dr. Ido, or Ito, however you say it, and I guess mainly those two, but some of the other side characters were pretty good too.
Okay. I'm going to switch real quickly over to comments. We've got one from Andrew, a greeting that you might be able to recognize, being a Kiwis. I don't know. Can you read that?
I think he used it last time when I was on the stream.
Yes.
I had no idea what it meant. So apparently it's a Maori greeting. That's what I learned last time I was on the stream. Yeah.
Yes. And he said he liked Alita, but felt Ghost in the Shell was better. Yeah, I think that it sounds like that's something that we should probably tackle as a movie. And then maybe you and I can talk about together. Maybe we can do that as a collaborative work. Try to tackle that one. Man, you guys have a lot of comments here about Ghost in the Shell. In Ghost, the anime contains a fair bit of nudity and violence, but the story and philosophical questions of AI and what it is to be human are completely different from the film. Tough call on review. Yeah, that might be. We'll have to kind of mix it up a little bit, see what we get. So the one of the points that was given to this as being a negative was if you had read the manga series and then watched the film goes very quickly and does not give the same level of development to Alita's character arc as what you have in the manga series. I don't know if you could really get around that. If you're going to have an hour and a half, 2 hour movie, you're limited in your time, right?
Yeah. I mean, unless they were planning to do like a trilogy or something like that, then you could maybe get away with slowing it down a bit more. But otherwise, I think, you pretty much have to go at this pace. I don't really see how you could slow it down much more than they did and still get a somewhat complete story in that first film, which ended up being the only film.
Right. I wonder, maybe there's a Peter Jackson version where he breaks it up like The Hobbit.
Yeah.
That's like, this 15 movie series.
Yeah.
So there's also one of the strengths, I think, in the movie too is the film's exploration of identity, purpose, and justice, paired with the visuals that are going there as well. There's all these action scenes with motorball that are happening in a high level of technical achievement. Now there's a little bit of trivia. They had some of the world's top inline skaters performing the motorball competitions, motorball competitors that were in there. And these actors were either in the 2003 X Game as competitors. And there was one in particular, Katie Ketchum, who doubled as Rosa Salazar. Rosa Salazar is the actress who played Alita. And so Katie did the rollerball sequences while Salazar was skating off to the side so that they could capture Katie's movements and Salazar's facial expressions. And then they were able to merge them together using CGI to get a blend of the two.
Yeah, that's cool. Sorry to interrupt real quick. Andrew says my volume's really quiet. I just tried turning it up. Is that any better, Andrew? Can you let me know in chat?
Yeah, thanks for checking that out. We were talking about that earlier because we're using we're using StreamYard and doesn't give us any ability to adjust individual volumes. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and play a scene from the movie here. It's a short clip, and maybe you guys can tell us too if the sound is not balanced correctly. So this is from the trailers, a bit of an introduction to her character arc. It shows from the beginning and where it goes from there.
You told me the story of the war, when the ground shook and the sky burned, of the ones that survived to a different world, prey on the weak. But that's not the way it has to be.
So this gives us a little bit of a taste of where she comes from, basically pulled out of a junkyard. This is a junkyard from the city above. And Dr. Edo then rebuilds her, gives her we're in spoiler territory, so I'm going to say this, gives her his daughter's body. I think, what kind of weird stuff. Well, she was crippled and he was developing an android body to be able to give her basically new legs. And so his daughter had died. He gives the body then to Alita, who he has found in the junkyard. And so that's where some of this comes from. I think there's a real good emotional connection between Alita and I don't know. Would you call him like a father to her?
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it. That was one of the other things I enjoyed about the film. Actually, was their connection. It's just kind of like a wholesome, father-daughter relationship there, and I really like it. I think she helped him. I think she helps him sort of move on from his daughter's death as well. I guess he kind of already had a purpose, but it was kind of a purpose looking backwards, where he's like trying to almost avenge his daughter over and over. And I think Alita coming along gave him more of a forward-looking purpose to like the future rather than the past.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about his own character development too, but you're right. He was, and his look into the past. He was looking for redemption because he had given basically her murderer the body or the ability. He's a rollerblader, right? He was a cyborg. Gave him the tools that eventually he used to kill his daughter. Right. And so he goes out as a hunter to do that. Okay, I'm going to do a real quick sound check. You do sound really hot now, which is
okay.
Back it off a bit. Maybe these guys can let us know. And just curious about the sound that we had here, guys, in the chat, how we are compared to the video, the video clip I just showed. What does the sound, both of us compared to, and then the video there, because we might have to make adjustments in the future. This is all like, sorry, guys, we're getting the mechanics of a live stream here. So,
yeah, okay. I just put mine down a bit after you said it sounds really hot. And then Andrew said before I spoke again, John, I see was better now. So I don't know. I might be too quiet again.
I don't know. I have mine too loud to try to get to you. So we'll see. Yeah. Okay. So, with his, so Victor, one of the bad guys in this show, not the ultimate nemesis, but one of the evil characters in this show is Vector. Vector is sort of the gateway back up to the city. You have everybody in Iron City wanted to get to the city above, and he makes this one statement. He said, "I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven." Here's a trivia question for everybody here. Even if you haven't seen the movie, if you recognize that phrase, "I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven," where does that come from?
I got no idea.
You have no idea? Okay. I'm going to wait for a minute for the chat to respond to that. And while we're going for that, another bit of trivia: the Hunter Warriors congregate in a bar, I don't know if you caught it or not, but the bar's name is Kansas. According to Volume 8 of the manga, the scrapyard Iron City is located in a land formerly known as Kansas City, Missouri.
Right.
But when I was watching the movie, I'm thinking, man, you know what? This is the second time watching through. I thought, I think I recognize this place, at least in the movie itself. It was not Kansas. It wasn't Kansas anymore, Toto. It was another place. Look familiar. Did you recognize anything of the scenery in the background or anything for maybe what the location was?
No.
Okay, so the way the story works is you have, this is 500 years in the future. You have these floating cities. I don't know what the advantage of having floating cities is, other than being separate from the people.
Yeah.
Imagine the energy it's going to take to be able to get to float that amount of mass. But anyway, you have floating cities, and there was this war with Mars, right? You had the United Republic of Mars, and there was some big battle between them, Earth and Mars. And Mars appears to have been a little bit more advanced. At least the Martian technology that's left over is like a hot commodity. It's like leaps beyond whatever technology there is on Earth. And all the cities had fallen except for this one that they're working with. So this one city, it reminded me, and I did some looking to see if this is true. It reminded me of Mexico City. And sure, right. It was like the central place where they're meeting and everything. There's this cathedral in Central City, and that's where it has the two domes on the top, and that appears to be what's left over from it. So this was, I would say, why would they change it to Kansas, from Kansas to Mexico City? And that might have to do with the director, Robert Rodriguez, his Hispanic background, his Latino background with Mexico. He brought that in to say, hey, we're going to center it on this instead.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, so the question about that quote. The quote was, "I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven." He's paraphrasing a line, and Thomas Hall got it. Milton, Paradise Lost. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. So, now what is this movie based on? It's not based on the novel. Are you, Jono, are you familiar with the series that this is based on at all?
Not really. I mean, I was vaguely aware it was either a manga or an anime, but I wasn't really sure. Okay.
And we did have the images we showed earlier. This is based on the manga. The name it's spelled. You can see the spelling here: Gunnm. I mean, how in the world do you pronounce that?
Yeah.
It was Gunmu. And
oh, right.
Yeah, I said, where's the U? I don't know, but that's how you pronounce it. It's like if you're going to transliterate from Japanese, you might as well make it phonetic. But it was a 9-volume Japanese manga released in North America as Battle Angel Alita, and written and illustrated by Yukito Kishiro. The comic book ran from 1990 to 1995, and it was followed by the 19-volume sequel, Battle Angel Alita Last Order, which ran from 2000 to 2014. And so I guess it was popular enough, especially for James Cameron then to pick it up and say, hey, we need to make a movie out of this. It seemed to do well. Now, here's the question. Why didn't it do well in the theater? Any speculation on why that's the case?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like possibly just partly name recognition. I mean, not that every movie needs to have that to do well, but people maybe just didn't know what it was and so didn't bother going and seeing it. I feel like based on what I've seen of the trailers and things, I mean, it looked reasonably appealing to me. I think if I'd known about it at the time, I still probably wouldn't have seen it in theater, but it would have been a movie I was definitely interested in seeing at some point. And I'm not really a theater guy, so like people who are more interested in theater, I feel like it must have just been kind of a failure in marketing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure why. I did some looking around for it. I'm not sure why it didn't do too well. There's a whole question about the sequel for this. Why they didn't come up for it. So if you have seen the movie, again, I'm going to put the spoiler warning up. If you have seen the movie, you might be a little bit shocked by the ending. There was a huge buildup in the movie about this this bad guy who is running the city up above, and it sets itself up for this big showdown. He's like the boss. She is going to, you're thinking about, okay, in terms of like a game, a role-playing game, she would have to go to these different boss levels, and you see she's going up and up and up, and she's proving herself on every step, and she's going to the big city. She's going to kill the boss, and it doesn't happen. It ends.
Yeah.
So did you have any disappointment with that at all? That was one of the reasons why I downgraded it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, probably the first time I saw it, I would have. The second time I knew it was coming, so I wasn't as worried about it, I guess. I obviously, when I first saw it, the first thing I would have done would be look up, is there a sequel to this, or when is it coming, or anything like that. I thought I had kind of briefly looked it up, even just the other day, and I saw something saying that James Cameron had confirmed in like 2023 that he still wants to do a sequel at some point. It's just, I guess, not currently happening. So I don't know if you'd found, like, if you'd done research and found something more recent than that says that they're not doing it at all. But it sounds like it's something that they would like to do, but who knows if it will ever happen.
Right.
And I think the movie could be definitely improved by if they had a really good sequel to finish the story, because it really isn't a complete story. I guess there's just so many things that I like about it that I'm not as worried about where the ending went. But I can definitely understand why you would take marks off for that like cliffhanger of an ending.
Okay. So the question of why no sequel, a sequel for this movie hasn't materialized yet due to a combination of factors. I did do a little bit of research in it and came up with 3 different reasons why maybe not. Yeah. That ending just really strongly hints at something coming down the path. You're like, oh, we're either going to start a series or something.
Yeah.
So there's 3 reasons, and maybe this is true, maybe it's not, just some speculation. Box office performance. While Alita was a success with audiences, its box office returns were disappointing. There was about 400 million globally. They're saying 400 million global. That's a good return, but not as high as anticipated for a film with a budget of 170 million. And in Hollywood, at least at the time, this was often seen as marginal success, especially for a potential franchise starter and one that you have some big names behind. So they're thinking, hey, this is going to be a big one, and it just didn't. But I'm wondering, today's box office returns does it seem like it's far less than that? It especially with the margin. It's like they don't even recoup their losses on a lot of these. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, I don't know what the marketing budget would be, because I don't know if that's included in that 170 million you mentioned. Oftentimes they report the budget and then the marketing budget is on top of that. And so the actual profits might have been, less than you would think.
That's true.
But it's doubtful the marketing budget was more than the film's budget. Therefore, it would have still made a profit. And a lot of these modern movies, they don't make a profit after marketing and the film's budget. So I think it would probably be a success by like this year. If this came out this year and did like comparatively similar numbers, it would probably be considered one of the better movies of the year, I would imagine.
Yeah, the second reason that was involved with this is James Cameron, that you mentioned that he said that he'd like to do the follow-up to it, the sequel. But he's also been involved in the Avatar sequels. So his hands have been tied with that, and maybe because of that, he hasn't been able to turn to it. But the third one, I think this is probably one of the bigger reasons, was the ownership changes.
Mm.
The acquisition of 20th Century Fox by Disney in 2019, the year this was released, had complicated matters. After the merger, Disney gained control over Fox's film projects, and Alita may not have been a high priority for Disney's existing slate of projects. I don't know about you, but I agree with that. Disney should not have done a sequel for Alita. It should focus on others, like destroying the Star Wars franchise or destroying the MCU franchise. I mean, they had a lot on their list. I mean, if they wanted to accomplish those things, which were monumental, I mean, how could you really destroy such a franchise with such great momentum? I mean, that's tough. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, they got a lot on their plate between Agatha All Along and The Acolyte. The fact that The Acolyte cost more than Alita to make is insane. I guess you account for inflation. Maybe it's different, but The Acolyte, $180 million budget. It just came out like today or yesterday that based on some other records that Disney's put out, it might be closer to 230 million. I'm pretty sure I saw, and so Alita, infinitely better looking film, infinitely better. Storytelling, everything about it is way better, and it was cheaper.
Yeah,
and it made a better profit, I would say.
Yeah. So why would they not? You have to. I sit back and I have to look and say, obviously, Disney's not in it for the money. At least not until recently, because they are pouring this in. It's like, did you guys not get clue for what happened with The Acolyte, and you want to dive into this Agatha All Along series? They're doing to they're doing to the MCU what they did to Star Wars.
Yeah, seems that way. Seems like all the same tactics. Yeah. I guess like if they cared about money, you can understand why them coming in, buying 20th Century Fox and looking at Alita, they would be like, it's not really worth doing a sequel. If they don't care about money, as you could say, based on what they've done with The Acolyte, then what they care about probably is pushing an agenda. And you might be able to say that Alita would be a great film to push an agenda with because it's already got the strong female lead character and all that. Yeah. But they don't care about pushing an agenda in franchises that they don't think people care about. And so if they don't think anyone's actually going to really bother tuning into Alita to watch it, they wouldn't bother financing a movie to push an agenda that nobody's going to see. They'd much rather go for something like Star Wars because they know so many people will come in because of the name, because of the brand, the franchise that's already existing, and then they can push their agenda to that many more people, I guess, in a franchise like that.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that Star Wars and the MCU were the fatted calves that they could sacrifice, and Alita need to put on a little bit more weight before they were willing to sacrifice her.
Yep, right? Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so checking the comments real quick. Budgeting, I think you might have been referring to what we were just talking about. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nicodemus. Thomas said, one thing that makes a manga better adaptable to film than American comics is that they have a beginning and an end instead of years of content with different writers and arcs. And maybe I could add to that, totally different rebooted characters at all. It's like, okay, Captain Marvel. Is that a he? Is that a she? What are we talking about? It's all over the place, right? So it's a little bit difficult to work with. Nicodemus said, with all the mass media discrimination of the American film industry and simultaneous push of anime manga, I could see the producing this soon before 2030. I would say so. Yeah. The big question is, in the past, generally speaking, I'm not sure this really works for Disney as much anymore, but does it turn a profit? You could say if a movie's first movie in a series came out and it was a success, they're going to come out with the number 2, even if it doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense from a story writing, it's like it was a complete full movie. It was done. It was finished.
Yeah.
Don't drag it on.
Yeah.
But it made money, so it will. Just like the reboots. Thomas Hall said, problem is Disney bought Fox that made the first film, so who knows? Yeah, that's basically with that.
The other problem is also, I think that if a sequel does come out now, it won't be good. That's the problem. I hope it will be, but I wouldn't count on it, and therefore I'd probably almost rather there not be a sequel than risk it coming out and being really bad.
That's a good point, especially if
with Disney in command.
Given, are you talking about specifically with Disney handling it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Even Robert Rodriguez, I think he did a great job directing this movie, but he was also involved in the book of Boba Fett, which is one of the worst Star Wars shows I've ever seen. And before the Acolyte, of course. And so I don't know what the deal is there. I don't know how much he had control over Book of Boba Fett, but after seeing where that show went, I'm like, I don't know if I would. I don't know how much I trust him to make another good movie. You know, you just don't know how it would go.
Right. Well, sometimes these guys are. Oh gosh, Ryan. Oh, I forget his last name. Director. What's that?
Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson. Thank you.
Yeah.
He did Knives Out.
Yeah, I quite liked that.
Which was like, whoa, that was really well done.
Yeah.
And that was I guess a good example from a writer's point of view of subverting expectations, because it actually changes genres halfway through the movie. If you take a look at it, we go from a murder mystery to a thriller escape movie, because how is this going to work out? And that worked out well, trying to subvert expectations with a beloved franchise like Star Wars and make Luke Skywalker look like, I don't know, a washed up has-been cynic. Oh man, no one wants to see that.
Yeah,
so there's a difference there.
Yeah, that's true. They can use the same trick in like certain films and it works, and then they use it in a different film and it doesn't. Because I'd say the same thing with Robert Rodriguez is that, I mean, I don't know how much he had to do with the writing of this film, but just comparing this film to something like Boba Fett, how I said earlier, Alita is actually she's kind of brought low and made to come back up and build up to her moment at the end where she's all heroic and powerful and great. Whereas, so many modern movies, there's no low moment for the protagonist. But Boba Fett, they did the same thing. They brought him down low and made him useless for most of the show, and then sort of built him up at the end. But it worked for Alita and it didn't work for Boba Fett, because we didn't want to see Boba Fett being weak and pathetic. We wanted to see him being this, the most lethal bounty hunter in the galaxy. And so where it works for one thing, it doesn't always work for the other thing. And if they're just kind of a one-trick pony, which I don't know if he is or not, but sometimes you end up with things like that where it just doesn't work for the franchise he's doing it in.
Right. That's a good point. So I've had Andrew Martin's comment here hanging along for a while. Might as well get to it. It says, logically, Alita would be a shoo-in for the girl boss style woke movies. Yeah, that is. I kind of got mixed emotions about it because, and maybe this is. All right, I want to show another scene, and then we'll dive into this. We'll talk about his comment here in a minute, because there's a whole question of the girl boss thing going on here. Does it work in the movie? Does it not? I want to know what you say, Jono, and I want to know what people in the chat say about it also. But let's take another look at this clip, and we'll make some comments about that. And if it's too loud, let us know.
Found you. Your very human brain was miraculously intact.
It's the loneliest feeling not to know who you are.
In time, you'll remember.
Yeah, so there you get to see a bit of the character arc that's going through. She starts off very innocent and then ends up discovering who she is. Basically this war machine, and then she starts applying that later, because the world she's in is very cruel and unjust. There's lawlessness. It's a real dystopian future about how dark things are, that it even destroys characters like her boyfriend Hugo, who seems to be a good guy, but there's a very dark side that he has as well.
Yeah.
So I want to, so I'm going to get back to the comments here and look at, let's see, we had.
There's one there that Nicodemus is saying not to read out loud. I don't really know why. I think it's the one that starts with, I agree, Andrew, completely. I think that's the one he doesn't want you to read. I don't know why. Okay. I
I got to make sure. Sometimes you just throw these up and they may not be the best idea.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just looking at it. I don't really know what's problematic about it, but I don't know if he doesn't want you to read it up, then I guess skip to the next Andrew Martin one.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Then Andrew Martin said, yeah, I think Jono was right. It's all about audience and the message. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I guess I agree with him agreeing with me. I don't know.
Well, I'm finding that very surprising.
Yeah.
So with let's talk a little bit about the girl boss thing here.
Yeah.
So we compared it a little bit earlier to movies like, let's say, The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And in that, she really didn't earn her cred the way that previous characters have, like Luke. Luke's development was a little bit quick too, but you'd see him going to Dagobah, you see him developing his skill over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, or do you think that she really did earn her cred?
I definitely don't think Rey earned her abilities at all. I think Luke definitely did, because you've only got so much time in the movies. But I mean, he got completely destroyed by Vader the first time he fought him. So I think that counts very much as a massive failure that he then has to come back from and learn from. I'm trying to think if Rey ever went through anything like that. At the very least, she was already way too powerful before she, like, if she did go through any failures, I can't even think of them, but I've only watched most of those movies once. Even in Force Awakens, she was way too powerful. She was fighting Kylo Ren with no training. It just didn't make any sense. Kylo Ren, who's had Jedi training and then training under Snoke as well. And sure, he was injured, but still, Rey should not have been able to stand against him just because she'd fought off a few, like, bad people in a marketplace with a staff before that. Like,
Right.
Made no sense.
Right. Yeah, and let's take another look at another one, Captain Marvel. Would she be?
Yeah.
Would you put her in the same category?
Probably. I guess at least in her case, she had an explanation, though. She had like the magical powers. And that's one of the things that Alita has going for her as well, is that I'm not expected to believe that a random, like, unenhanced woman can do all these things, beat up all these guys, because Alita is actually a really powerful cyborg. She's got all the cybernetics to back her up, and the training, I guess, too. And I guess at least Captain Marvel had some kind of powers, but they didn't really let her do anything with them or struggle with them at all, hardly. Like, from memory, again, I've only seen that movie once, but from memory, I think her success was basically just came from her realizing, oh, I'm more powerful than I thought I was. Now I can win. I don't know. I don't think she really struggled too much either.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think seeing the struggle is a big part of it. Thomas Hall had a comment about that. Alita's has more humanity than your typical girl boss. The audience has empathy for her. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think I really like how curious she is, and how I guess she has a lot of enthusiasm for, like, getting to know the world and meeting new people and all that. And she's just got, really, like, open heart, like very, very happy and just engaging to watch, and extremely likable because of it. Whereas a lot of these other characters, like Captain Marvel or Rey Palpatine, as I will call her, I'm never going to call her Rey Skywalker. Those characters, they're just like, they're trying so hard to be really stoic all the time that they very, very rarely show any sense of, like, humanity, I guess, and it makes them incredibly unlikable.
I think you're right. That's a really good point. That and the other thing too is, once you like a character, you're able to overlook some of the other flaws maybe that are written behind it. Maybe one of the first scenes that she wakes up, she's basically been restored after being, I don't know, she's supposed to be over 300 years old, because that's how long it's been since the war, the fall. And she rediscovers things, like she eats an orange. The doctor gives her an orange. She just bites directly into it. She's got this really sour, they did a good job with the expressions, this really sour look on her face. He laughs and he says, well, maybe you do this. And I really liked his character too. He was
awesome.
Yeah. He was a bit of a saint in a very dark place. It's a guy that you really like. You like the relationship between the two. You really do want to see her succeed, I think, is maybe the the impetus behind it.
Yeah.
So we have a follow up here from Andrew. He says, "Yeah, you're right, Thomas Hall. She had the emotional weakness at the start, and grows into her power. So that's the girl boss of Miss Marvel." I think it's better.
I think he corrects himself in the next one. He says that's not the girl boss like Miss Marvel.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think so. I think she starts off a little bit too naive at the beginning, but she's very likable. There's the puppy.
Yeah, now, literally saves the dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you talking about, so from a writer's standpoint, is that what you're
you'd mentioned the save the cat thing in a past one we did together. And I was thinking about it's funny because the 2 movies we've done since then, what was the one we did with Will Smith? But he saves a cat in that one. Yes. iRobot. And then she saves a dog in this one. It's like really, really going out of the writer's textbook there, but it works.
Yeah, it does. If you guys haven't heard this before, the idea is that early on when establishing your character, if you want to have a likable character, you have a pet the dog moment, or save the cats. And there's actually a book written, Save the Cat is the name of it, and that's for writers. And the idea is that you develop this empathy for this character, and we definitely do have it for there. And then you have the dog cyborg guy that's in there too. Yeah. He has his dogs. They just sit back, and he's got these like cyborg dogs, and he goes after one of the bad guys, and his dogs just chase after him. And then he mentions something about he's not a dog lover, and so it works well.
Yeah.
So Thomas Hall mentioned, says, and she's feminine at times, at least. She displays compassion.
Yeah, I really like that. Because that's another big problem with characters like Captain Marvel, Ray, and a lot of the other ones is you could replace them with a guy and nothing would change. They don't actually exhibit any actual feminine traits really, and so I like that Alita does. And I also think Alita's kind of like the foil to the feminist argument that we all just hate like strong female characters because we hate women or something like that. And then the other part of their argument, which is, oh, well, if you do like them, you only like the ones who are over-sexualized who you can just use for eye candy. Like Alita's not over-sexualized. She's like, I don't know, she's, I guess, made to have like a pretty face in a weird anime kind of way, but she's not this over-sexualized character. And yet we still really like her because of who she is, not because of how she looks. Right. And so that whole argument kind of falls apart with a character like Alita, I think, that feminist argument.
Yeah. Now, I would disagree a little bit here in saying there was a few times in the movie they mentioned that is the body of a warrior. And I'm thinking, okay, they established well that her body being mechanical is higher technology. It's a few steps beyond what is currently out there because there's lost technology because of the fall. They're basically living in a sort of dark ages in this time here. And previous higher technology was from Mars. It was like the best stuff. It's like, oh, you want to buy a car, you buy it from Mars. And so her body was from that. And nobody else could match that. Doesn't matter how big and powerful it was. It was mostly in the heart too, right? Because basically that was some kind of reactor.
Yeah.
She has all this power from. And then the frame then around her, she's got this nanotech healing ability and it's a higher density alloy and so forth. So that does make sense. But just the lithe frame itself, if you have a bigger body, and maybe a more powerful core, then it would be able to defeat her if they both have the same skill level.
Yeah.
So if you're just looking at the body itself, looking at a female body versus a male body has more strength.
Yeah.
And you say, well, she's got some moves and some kicks. Well, you could also do that with the male body as well.
Yeah. I think it would have been interesting if maybe they'd addressed that and said maybe something like, whatever unit she was from was some kind of unit designed to be more fast and agile, and that, you know, even just, I don't know if it would need to be addressed, but if there was some more bulky masculine type unit that was more for the like the brute force type like assaults and all of that, like more like a Space Marine or something like that from Warhammer 40k, rather than Alita's little like slender frame.
Right.
It'd be cool to have both working in different roles, but you're right. Yeah, I mean, objectively, the male body's probably going to be better in pretty much every situation I can think of in combat.
Yeah. And so here's the thing where I have a contention with. To say that strength is just fighting, just for combat. There's other types of strengths. There's a masculine strength and a feminine strength. Men cannot compete with women on the feminine where women have their strengths. And I don't think that women can really compete with men where men have their strengths. There's aberrations that are in there. Yeah. The problem with this is you have women that are trying to be like men, and in our culture, men that are trying to be like women. Mm-hmm. And it really messes things up. And these role models I think they're really misplaced. We should not go to our girls and say, be like that guy. No, be like that woman, where that real strength is. So, but they do show her feminine side in here. And so I think that's where, you guys were talking about it here.
Yeah.
So having that feminine side in there really does help. And we're all rooting for her. It's not so much rooting because of the comedy. We're talking about comedy being a strength to gloss over failures. Here, what's going to gloss over failures is she's so likable. You want her to win because I think another contrast here is her innocence versus the darkness around her.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because she is in this is such a dystopian world that is fallen and decayed. And it's like one of the things that rubs me a little bit hard when watching this movie is to say that I don't want a future like this.
Yeah.
This is nasty. This is corrupt. This is fallen nature gone bad.
Yeah.
And then she's a good contrast. So thematic review. This is the best part of our review, and we save it for last. We ask the question, are there any Christian themes of this movie that we can use to deliver a message of instruction or hope to a dying world? Finding unique Christian themes in a movie like Alita Battle Angel can be a bit challenging, especially since it's not explicitly Christian. But that doesn't really matter because there are a few themes that might be seen through a Christian lens and could be told in this unique context and have a unique message. So, Jono, did you see anything in this movie that you might consider as a Christian theme?
I guess kind of. It might be a bit of a tenuous connection, but one of the ones that I thought of about just themes for the movie is sacrificing for the ones you love, where Alita was literally willing to give her heart to Hugo, to sacrifice the very thing that gives her life, just to help him achieve his dream, I guess. And it wasn't even her dream. She just cared so much about him that she was willing to put his needs above her own. But also, as kind of a part of that, her selflessness and love and her the sacrifice she offered him, even though he didn't take it, was enough to convince him to turn from his criminal ways and sort of aim more upward towards a more moral path. Yep. And so I was thinking you could maybe draw somewhat of a parallel between her willingness to sacrifice for him and Jesus laying down his own life for us. And I guess also the fact that because of that, we are called to sort of aim upwards and try to live a life as free from sin as we can and all that kind of stuff. So I guess it's one of the things that I thought of for that.
Okay, great. So self-sacrifice and love for that. So you're talking about for Hugo, the sacrifice that she was
I guess
doing?
in her case, yeah, it's that mainly, I think.
Okay. There was that one scene, and I had it on the clips that we're showing, but I can't, I had difficulty finding it directly. Great scene where she's giving him her heart. Now this is what the enemy, Vector, and the others want. This heart, this reactor that is this lost technology that it's like if they could get their hands on that, they just want her for her parts, right? They don't want her for her. They just want her for her bits and pieces. She's going to hand this over to Hugo, her boyfriend. And He's the parts guy. He goes out there and grabs parts off of cyborgs, right? He chops them to bits. Doesn't kill them, right? That's how he justifies it.
Yeah.
But he says, don't do that. It's a really great scene.
Yeah.
So is this one of the scenes where you're talking about she's willing to do this for him?
Yeah, that's the main one I had in mind for that. I guess there's a few other scenes just in general where she's kind of willing to sacrifice or at least risk her life, even just for, I guess, the general safety of the city. Like, I forget what that guy's name is, the really, really big, bulky dude that she fights in the bar, and he basically like cuts her to pieces. But she was, I guess, willing to fight him and lose and get completely cut up and almost die, just to, I guess, try and get rid of him because he's preying on the weak and innocent out there as well. Right. So that's another sacrifice there as well.
Yeah, she makes this statement. It's very powerful, and I think it's appropriately made at this time. She said she tries to recruit all these bounty hunters, right, to go do this. She says, we can make a difference here. She gives a speech, and they basically laugh her off. Her speech, in the ears of this twisted, corrupt society, sounds stupid. It sounds like it's just empty and vapid. And she makes a statement. She says, I will not stand by in the presence of evil. I think it's a challenge for us all. And that's one of the themes that I would look at in this is say, as we're living in this world that is upside down, that good is bad, bad is good, and we don't even know what a woman is. We need to stand up and say, I will make a difference. And C.S. Lewis said, the closer you get to the end of an age, it's more obvious who is serving God and who is not. As it gets darker, those who are still holding light become that much brighter because of the contrast. If you look back in previous generations, those people that stood out for justice and were true Christians were not maybe outstanding as much as the people around it. But as the world around us becomes darker, and if we hold our line, if we stand firm, that contrast will become deeper and deeper. She says, I will not stand by in the presence of evil, and evil mocks her for it.
Mm. So, yeah, I love that line. It was really good.
Yeah. And this is another theme that you see in here is the moral decay of power. The movie contrasts the wealthy elite of Salem, the floating city, right? This is the city above, almost like it's unreachable. You can't get to it. And it is above the downtrodden, the chaotic world below. And it's highlighting the themes of, you can say, class division, inequality, the moral decay of the powerful. This is a bit of a interesting comparison. Do you see any play on words with the name Salem?
Don't know. I can't think of one.
Okay, I'm going to let that linger and see in the chat too. And while I let that question linger for those people in chat, I'm going to check out what you say in here because there's some really good comments that are going on. Thomas Hall said, I don't envy women for being the ones giving childbirth. No thanks. I could not do that despite being bigger and stronger. I would agree with you. Yep. Even if we're trying to just saying that you're going to become the opposite gender, this is going to get me kicked off YouTube, is not going to be sufficient to just say that or maybe take some hormones. The human body is sculpted and changed from our skeletal structure is different. The back of the brain, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you're a guy, you can feel the back of your skull and there's like this little bump right there in the back. Yeah, right. For women, it's not as pronounced. And it goes with the neck muscles, and it's able to give you more strength here to guide it. You get that whether you have the neck of a football player or not. You still, as guys, you still have that the extra rib and the pelvic bone. Talking about giving childbirth, it's different angle, and the birth canal is larger. There's no way guys could do that at all. So it's a huge difference between the two. And April said, good point, a great point about the different strength that women have And I think we need to honor that. We need to point that out and say, thank God we have some good mothers out there, because the human race would not be here without them, and the strength that they have, being able to parallel process. I watch my wife we've had several kids. I think the last count was 7. So being able to handle them all at the same time in parallel process. I'm a serial thinker. She's able to keep tabs of all these things at the same time. I can't do that. So Thomas Hall said, Hugo was perhaps wisely saying it was foolish to trust that much. But in the end, he thanked her for saving him. You'd have to suppose he meant his soul, his humanity, since she did not save his body. That's absolutely true. I mean, it's tragic. Spoiler warning. It's actually tragic. I hated the fact they killed off Hugo. But it's anime, right? It's Japanese. You know that's going to happen. It's Japanese. Definitely. So the question about Zalem, the name hints at Zalem being aspirational, almost divine place, but in the film, it also carries a darker undertone. Think about Salem, meaning peace, or Jerusalem, the city on the hill. This is up there. There's almost a mystical, spiritual quality to the place. You don't get to see it. You hear about people coming down from it, how it's that much greater. Everybody wants to go up to it. It symbolized a place of privilege, power, and control where only the elites are allowed, while those in Iron City earn to descend to it. And you get to see in the end how you actually get up there. It's not a pretty piece. This creates a tension between the two cities, reinforcing the film's theme of class disparity and social hierarchy. There's a couple other themes in here as well. There's empowerment and agency, about the whole thing about her being able to do what she wants to do, going from innocence to maturity and reaching those levels. I think they did a great job with her mentor and father. She does say father in the movie there at the end. That was a really touching scene. But he seems to be holding her back, and her way to get to reach the point where she needs to be, she needs to let go of him and go on. And she basically is maturing. As an adult, as a parent, it's very difficult to let our children go sometimes, because we want to protect them. We want them to mature, but they can't hit that point of maturity unless we let them go. And then the question of human versus machine. And we're going to be touching on this more in future live streams. I've got this in my novels. And there's a real question whether this whole cybernetic thing is a good thing or not. Because you watch these guys that are cyborg, they just basically only have a human face and maybe human brain that's left. And everything else is mechanical and cybernetic. It's gross.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be our future? Is this the future that we want on something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I sure hope not. Even like always, like all these video games like Cyberpunk and that, I remember seeing that game coming out and I was thinking, can I just not get any like mechanical enhancements on my character, because I don't want them. And same in real life. I do not want, a mind chip. I don't want anything like that. Maybe if I was disabled, if I'd like lost an arm or something and I could have a mechanical one, sure. But I wouldn't be voluntarily cutting up my body to do it.
Yeah, that was so I think that's where the difference in the difference is. If you're disabled somehow, and this is going to help you along as an aid, I think that's an acceptable thing in general. But if you're going to cut off a perfectly good arm or gouge out a perfectly good eye, well, it's poor vision or whatever. But even then, is it right? Is it worth it? I mean, we're not, as human beings, how many parts would you be able to cut off and say that you're no longer human?
Yeah.
These are, I think this really sets it up for a longer discussion for another live stream, and probably should not get into it too much here. Andrew Martin said cyborg visualization is ugly. Yeah, some of There's that one cyborg, I forget her name. She's like a spider woman with this head attack. It's just like, just not good. But if you have something that looks like, it's human, that's close to it, it's not so off-putting. But yeah, there's some kind of Borg situation going on here. Thomas Hall said, sadly, Alita could never have children or the pleasure of making children. Boy, that's a good point. We have a society that's right now willing to disregard that and downplay and vilify having children. Handmaid's Tale. So, we don't want that. Well, we don't want to imprison or to force people to basically make them human wombs. But at the same time, looking at our society that has a problem with low population right now, this is a serious thing. People being immature and just deciding, I got to be very careful in saying that, because there are multiple reasons why somebody may choose not to have a child. And then there are people that cannot have children. Those are different situations. But for very selfish reasons, to say, I'm not going to have children, and then look down on those who are spending their lives raising the next generation, I think is a very ugly thing.
Yeah.
April said, sadly, the option to enhance for the sake of it will be offered in the future. Yeah. And if you don't have those enhancements, you may not be able to compete economically. I think that would be a big impetus why, somebody if you go walk into an interview and somebody says, oh, well, don't you have the latest attachment? Don't you have the latest upgrade? The answer is no. I'm just totally biological. And they say, I'm sorry, we need somebody with better abilities than you do. We just can't take you. I think that kind of thing is going to be very tough. April said, breast augmentation was meant for treatment after breast cancer. Now it's just an offer like sweets. Yep. All this enhancement. Well, I would say after all this, probably the thing that stands out to me as being the biggest Christian theme that you can look in this movie to say that here we can pull this out, we can use this, is the search for identity. Alita's journey to discover her past and understand who she truly is resonates deeply throughout the film. It's probably one of the major themes in the movie itself. This is tied to themes like amnesia and loss of history, making her search for both self, both literal and metaphorical. She discovers who she is. She's looking for her purpose. She's looking for her identity. And if we have our identity in Christ, things click into place. We're given the manual for our Creator. This is the manual for ourselves. She was looking to say, who am I? And at one point, her father / mentor, Dr. Dyson, says, I don't have the manual for your new body. I don't know. This is all unwritten. A lot of cases, we don't know exactly what God has planned for us. And it's a lot of our own choices, what's before us. But ultimately, if we try to live without him, we'll end up looking like these monstrous cyborgs that will have some semblance of what we were supposed to be, but not really. It's far away from some sort of twisted reality of itself. April also mentioned standing up, searching for the truth until the end. Yes, and standing up against evil. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. AI will be superhuman very soon. Thank you for your encouragement, Andrew. I'm now going to kick you from the chat. Andrew's a bot. He's an AI bot. He's not real. He's just trolling us out there.
Yeah.
So did you do you have any other final comments about this, Jono?
No, not that I can think of. I mean, yeah, really enjoyed the movie, mostly due to the characters and even the world building too. And yeah, as you said, I guess the ending was a bit of a letdown. Probably wouldn't have been if it had gotten a sequel, but yeah,
Right. Yeah, I guess it's a more powerful letdown because there is no sequel.
Yeah.
At least not yet. And the advantage, I guess, with doing this a lot CGI with Alita and some of the other characters having been killed off, we don't have to worry about de-aging the main character because she's already mostly CGI anyway. So, so that we're concerned to trying. I'm going to de-age Gollum. I'm going to put them in there and make them look young. So when you get down to it, Alita's journey of discovering her identity and purpose mirrors our own spiritual search for meaning. Just as Alita is rescued from a garbage dump, rebuilt, and given new life, we too are made whole by our Creator who gives us purpose beyond what we can see. When the world tosses us aside and says, I'm through with you, God says, I'm just starting with you. Coming up next, we're going to delve into the history of the Child of the Stone and looking at a test of greed. What is this story all about? And this is an historically based short story. We're going to look at some of the history behind it and some of the philosophical questions that are asked about it. And this is next Tuesday night. And then we got some more that are coming up with. After that, we had the follow-up of our previous live stream talking about 7 ways that God loves science. There's pretty much how the Bible supports science. We're going to look at 7 Christian scientists, not to be confused with the cult of Christian science, but to say that there are 7 scientists who were Christians that changed the world that we know. We'd be living in a completely different world if it had not been for these individuals. Maybe somebody else would have stepped up to the bat and it would have made the discoveries or the conclusions that they made. Maybe not. But just to say that, oh, you Christians are all backwards, ignorant, uneducated, whatever the deal is, you say, look at these guys. Okay, these are people that changed the world and made the modern world that we live in now a possibility. So yeah, no, that's not true. So, Jono, what about you? Do you have anything coming up, and how do people find you?
So you can find me at the Culture Crusader on YouTube. That's really the only place I'm active. I've been reviewing Agatha all along, the Marvel TV show that's taking a leaf out of the Acolyte's book. Why
do you do this to yourself?
Well, it can be entertaining making fun of it, but also I kind of feel like it needs to be called out when these franchises stray so far from the original target audience, where they're deliberately basically like spitting in the face of that audience and saying, no, stuff you, we're gonna do what we want to do. We're gonna tell the stories we want to tell, and we don't care if you don't like it. And it's especially bad when it's pushing the polar opposite of morality, which I think the Acolyte did. And it's kind of looking like, it's very much looking like Agatha's probably going the same direction. And so I feel like someone needs to talk about these things. I mean, there are other people doing it too, but I don't know. I don't feel like I could just be like, oh yeah, I'm just happy to stand by and let, the Marvel superhero universe descend into a show about evil villains doing evil stuff and getting away with it. I assume, I don't know. We'll see where it goes, but yeah.
In addition, it's poorly written as well, right? At least,
especially, the Acolyte obviously terribly written. Agatha, I think, is not nearly as low quality in terms of writing so far. I definitely don't think it's good, but yeah, it's not nearly as brain dead as the Acolyte was. But yeah, I've just put up the 2nd episode's review tonight, and I'll be going through the whole season. I think we'll see how we go with that. That's what I'm planning to do currently. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely give you a shout out to that. I had played with the idea of delving into that. I'm glad you are, because I don't think I'm ready. I don't have the same hazmat suit that you do. So hats off to you. Good luck. Go watch his reviews, and buyer beware. Be warned about it. And I'm glad you are raising the flag for that. So until then, guys, it's been fun working with Jono. Looking forward to more in the future. Yeah. And we'll sign off with this.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.